Hey guys, thanks again for joining us. This is our weekly Q&A. I'm Mally with C-Spot Run. Today I thought I'd spend a bit of time talking about rewards and how we use rewards in dog training to improve or increase the likelihood that a behavior will occur. So you may have heard the terms thrown around, positive reinforcement dog trainer or reward-based dog training, and that's exactly a lot of what I do in my work with C-Spot Run and in my work with my own dogs and with other people's dogs. So I'll just start off by talking about what is positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is something that you add into the dog's life to make that behavior more likely to occur. Unlike what most people think, positive in this case, it doesn't mean good, it means adding. Likewise, if I were to say negative reinforcement, it means I'm taking something away from the dog's life in order to make behavior more likely to occur. We also work in the sphere of positive punishment, which means adding something into the dog's life which would make the behavior going forward less likely to occur. So we could consider something like yelling at a dog, adding something into the dog's life which the dog dislikes and would hopefully make that behavior less likely to occur. But I guess the best way to modify or improve a dog's behavior is always looking at what reinforces the behaviors that we do want to see out of those dogs. So using positive reinforcement is the best place to start. And when it comes to positive reinforcement, we're talking about things that go way beyond food. Food obviously is a place that a lot of dog trainers would start looking at in order to improve behavior. But it's not always the best thing to look at. I know from my own experience working with puppies, most puppies, because they're in a stage of growth, they generally find food to be pretty motivating and pretty reinforcing. So we may use food because it's also easy for clients to deliver to their puppies in exchange for doing good behaviors. But older dogs may lose interest in food treats or may lose interest in the type of food treats that you're using. And it's not uncommon for me to work with dogs that the owners will say to me, oh yeah, that my dog, if you can hold a food treat up to his nose and he just kind of turns his head away and spits it out or doesn't have any interest in it. And then obviously if that dog's not interested in food, we've got to figure out what makes that dog tick. What kind of currency does that dog work for? It's obviously not food in this situation, so let's look outside of the box. So just going back to food, if we are using food, we always look at the types of food that we're going to use. I think in most cases I find something soft, meaty, and fragrant, something that a human would put into their own mouth, like steak or roast chicken or scrambled egg or even little bits of cheese. A dog is probably going to find far more motivating and rewarding than something like a dry piece of dog kibble or a dry biscuit that they would just find in their food bowl every evening when you feed them dinner. So look outside of the box at the food that you may be using to motivate your dog to perform certain behaviors. I had a dog years ago, it was a Cocker Spaniel, that would do cartwheels for plain low-fat yogurt. That's something that I wouldn't do much for, but this dog seemed to think that plain low-fat yogurt was the be-all and end-all. So we worked with that. We literally took a tub of plain low-fat yogurt with us to the park, and there you go. We've got a dog that's performing some brilliant behaviors. Probably one of the areas that I really, really like to look at when I'm looking at rewards and motivators for dogs to encourage or improve behavior is play. I mean, there are so many different games that dogs generally really love to play with us. I'll use the classic, tennis ball. I worked with a dog this weekend, smart cookie of a dog, wasn't food motivated, but loved having the ball tossed for it. So we got the dog to start doing some sits. As soon as they did the sit, we marked it with a good, and then we tossed the ball. And we got some really good performance out of that dog, just respecting the fact that the dog wasn't interested in food, but would do anything for access to a ball being thrown. Likewise, it might be a toy, a stuffed toy, something that makes noise, or this one has like a little crinkly sound to it. So maybe if I'm working with a dog and I get them to come when called, the reward for getting them to come when called is pulling this toy out from behind my back and giving it to them to play with for a moment. Or maybe it involves me playing tug of war on the end of the toy. Or maybe if it's a dog that's got a little bit of predatory drive and that's what they find really reinforcing, I've got a stuffed toy attached to a rope and I just simply drag it across the ground and let the dog chase after the toy after doing a behavior that I wanted to see that dog do more often. So it really is all about respecting like what your dog wants at that moment and being in a position as its dog trainer to deliver it to them in a timely manner to reinforce behavior. Now let's just say your dog's not too interested in stuffed toys, or you're not sure where to start when you're working with a stuffed toy. And one of the things that I like to do, or that I coach clients to do, is to go to the pet store, go to the shop and pick out, something soft and squidgy, maybe something that's got some real fur to it, definitely something that maybe has a squeaker in it, and get a plastic bag or get the bag from the shop and put the toy in the plastic bag. And when you come home from the shops, find your dog and capture their interest and say, I've got my assistant's dog here, Falky. Falky, what's this? What's this, Falky? Oh my goodness, what's in the bag? What's in the bag? So you can actually create excitement with this mystery thing in the bag that's all about them. And so when I eventually pull the toy out and show it to the dog, they're already so excited and aroused about it. They're going to find this toy to be so reinforcing, especially when I'm playing with it with them. So that's something that you can do to kind of start using toys in your training and get your dog really excited to perform for those toys. The other thing that we can think about too, we know that dogs love to be able to sniff in the ground. They love to pull smells through their noses. They find it incredibly rewarding and reinforcing to be allowed to sniff. So encouraging dogs to be allowed to sniff the ground in exchange for doing good behavior is also a way that you can reinforce that good behavior. I use this all the time when I'm teaching dogs to walk nicely on a loose leash next to me. They do 20 or 30 steps down the street, giving me great eye contact and walking on a nice loose leash, and then I'll literally give them a cue to go sniff, go have fun, go smell the ground for a bit, and the dog is more likely going to perform that loose leash walking because they know at some point I'm going to give them what they want, which is to be allowed to sniff the grass. I may also teach dogs to sniff the grass, so I might toss some food treats through the grass and say, go find it, and get them to play a bit of a search and sniff game in exchange for doing good behavior. So that's something to think about as well, the fact that dogs really love to smell. As humans, I think we tend to, that sense, for us it's not as strong, we don't rely on it as much, but we have to respect the fact that our dogs really, really love to play smell games. So being allowed to sniff is a reward. That's another one. So I'm also a really big fan of paying attention to giving dogs access to things in exchange for good behavior. So for example, I know a lot of dogs get really super excited when the owner goes to the cupboard and pulls out the leash and the collar and says, hey, you want to go for a little walk? And dog gets super excited, races to the door, owner puts the leash on, opens the door, and dog just goes, boom! Well, why not use the access of going for a walk as a reward? So withholding opening that door until your dog shows you a nice sit-stay behavior, or does a drop behavior, and then their reward for doing that drop or that drop stay is opening the door and saying free and letting them go outside for their walk. Also things like access to maybe jumping up on the sofa or jumping up on the bed for cuddles. Get your dog to do a nice sit stay or a drop stay, and then using the invitation of up, access to being up on the sofa as a reward for doing that good behavior. Also doing things like making sure your dog's not jumping out of a vehicle at the park before they do a nice sit-stay, or if your dog really loves saying hello to other dogs, they find social interactions with other dogs as a very rewarding experience, use that to your advantage. Think about getting your dog to be settled and calm on their leash and maybe holding a sit-stay before you unclip the lead and let them go have an interaction with a new dog, which they would find really, really rewarding. One of the difficult things you could be doing, or things that could be challenging for you, is if you're letting your dog off the leash to go say hi to other dogs when they're super excited, pulling on the lead, grabbing on the lead, or doing behaviors that we don't want to necessarily reinforce. Other things, if you've got a high drive dog, like say a herding breed dog, allowing that dog to herd things in exchange for doing good behavior, that's also a type of reward system. We know terrier dogs generally like to dig. It's not uncommon to get a dog to be allowed to dig something up in exchange for doing a good behavior. Retrievers like to retrieve things, so they would be the dogs that may find the toss of a ball and fetching it to be incredibly rewarding. So I guess I just want to leave you today with a bit of homework, and that is to think about the top 5 things in your dog's day that get them super excited, and write them down in order from top to bottom, and start using those things that your dog gets really excited for and incorporating them into a really great training plan. If you're struggling with this is something that a professional dog trainer that does label themselves as reward-based can really, really help you with, and help you identify or help you foster. So if you're a bit stumped as to how to go about doing it, there's always an answer out there for you. I'd love to see your comments in the comment thread. Maybe you have something that you found really motivates your dog's behavior that's a bit outside of the box, it's a bit outside of your average food treat. I would love to hear about it. So please comment in the comment thread. And if you have any questions, as always, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks, guys.